The fluorescent lights in conference room Delta hummed like angry wasps as I watched Marcus Reed stride in 20 minutes late. No apology, no acknowledgement of the 12 department heads who'd been waiting. Just that trademark smirk and the Hermes briefcase his trust fund had bought him for graduation. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. I'm Chelsea Smith, and I've been the Chief Technology Officer at Nexus Dynamics for 8 years. 8 years of building their entire digital infrastructure from the ground up. Every server, every security protocol, every line of code that kept their billion-dollar operation running. That was my architecture. Marcus dropped into the leather chair at the head of the table like he owned gravity itself. Which, technically, he did. Daddy's company, Daddy's rules. But Daddy was dead, and now Marcus was playing king with a business he barely understood. Alright, people, he said, not bothering to open his laptop. Let's talk about streamlining. I felt my stomach drop. In corporate speak, streamlining was just a fancy way of saying firing people to boost quarterly numbers. He pulled out a tablet, gold-plated, because subtlety wasn't his strong suit, and started reading names. Department by department, position by position. Marketing got gutted. HR lost 3 people. Operations was sliced in half. Then he got to my department. Technology will be restructured, he said, his eyes finally landing on me. We're outsourcing most IT functions to cloud tech solutions. More cost-effective. The room went silent. Everyone knew what that meant. My entire team, the brilliant engineers I'd handpicked and trained, would be replaced by a call center in another time zone. What about the proprietary systems? I asked, keeping my voice steady. The custom security protocols? The client data integration platforms? Marcus waved his hand like he was swatting away an annoying fly. Details, Chelsea. Cloud tech can handle it. They've assured us they can reverse engineer anything we need. Reverse engineer? I stood up slowly. Marcus, these aren't off-the-shelf programs. These are custom-built systems that took years to perfect. You can't just hand them over to strangers and hope for the best. He leaned back in his chair, that condescending smile spreading across his face. Chelsea, I appreciate your attachment to your work. But let's be realistic here. Technology people are disposable. There's always someone younger, cheaper, hungrier. Disposable, the word hit me like a physical blow. 8 years of 18-hour days, of missing family dinners to fix critical bugs, of building something extraordinary from nothing. Disposable, but I didn't break. I didn't shout. Instead, I did something I'd been unconsciously preparing for. Since the day I signed my contract, I smiled. You know what, Marcus? You're absolutely right. Technology people are disposable. I closed my laptop with a soft click. I'll clean out my office. The confusion in his eyes was beautiful. He'd expected a fight, tears, maybe some desperate negotiation. Instead, he got agreement. Good, he stammered. That's good. Professional. I gathered my things, just my laptop bag and the small cactus plant I kept on the conference table for luck, and walked toward the door. But I paused at the threshold. Oh, Marcus? One small thing. Check your email in about 10 minutes. There's something you'll want to see. The elevator ride to the parking garage felt like the longest 60 seconds of my life. But I wasn't devastated. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was excited, because 8 years ago, when old Mr. Reed, Marcus's father, had hired me, he'd done something unusual. Something his entitled son had obviously never bothered to read in the company bylaws hidden in Section 47C of my employment contract, buried beneath pages of standard legal language, was a clause that most people would have overlooked. Hell, most lawyers would have missed it, but I hadn't. The Innovation Protection Provision stated that any employee who developed proprietary technology essential to company operations had the right to claim partnership equity if their position was eliminated without cause, provided they could demonstrate that their removal would constitute material operational risk. Material operational risk. Like, say, firing the person who built and maintained 100% of your digital infrastructure. The clause had been Mr. Reed's idea. He'd been burned by a competitor who'd poached his head of R&D, taking critical patents with them. His solution was elegant: make key innovators partners instead of employees. Give them skin in the game. Marcus had just triggered the nuclear option, and he didn't even know it. I sat in my car in the parking garage and opened my laptop. The email was already drafted. I'd written it 3 years ago and updated it quarterly. Just in case. Professional, legal, and absolutely devastating. I attached the documentation I'd been meticulously maintaining, every system I'd built, Every innovation I'd patented under the company name, every critical function that would grind to a halt without my direct involvement. Then I sent it, not just to Marcus, but to the board of directors. To legal. To the company's outside counsel. The subject line was simple: Notice of Partnership Equity Claim under Section 47C. Somewhere above me, in his glass-walled office, Marcus was about to discover that calling someone disposable could be a very expensive mistake. The first sign that my email had detonated came exactly 17 minutes later. My phone rang. Not my work phone, which they'd already disconnected, but my personal cell. Chelsea? The voice was tight with barely controlled panic. This is Sandra Hoffman, from legal. Sandra and I had worked together on several compliance projects over the years. She was smart, thorough, and right now, she sounded like someone who'd just discovered a ticking bomb under her desk. Hi, Sandra. I assume you got my email? Jesus Christ, Chelsea. Please tell me this is some kind of joke. I was sitting in a coffee shop 3 blocks from the office, watching the Nexus building through the window like it was a nature documentary. Did you run it past the contract team? I'm looking at it right now. Thomas is here too, he's our senior partner specialist. We've been going through the documentation for the last 20 minutes. I sipped my latte. And a lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. A long pause. It's ironclad. Completely legal. The provision is valid, your claim is documented, and another pause. Fuck. Excuse my language, but fuck. So you'll be recommending that the board honor the claim? Chelsea, do you understand what you're asking for? This isn't just about getting your job back. Section 47C grants equal partnership status. That means 50% ownership of the company. I nearly choked on my coffee. 50%? The provision was designed when the company was smaller. Mr. Reed, the father, never updated it when they expanded. If someone successfully claims under 47C, they become an equal partner with the primary shareholder. My heart started racing. I'd known the clause granted partnership rights, but I'd never calculated the exact percentage. In my mind, I'd been fighting for maybe 10 to 15% equity. Enough to secure my position and protect my team. 50% meant something else entirely. 50% meant control. There's more, Sandra continued. Marcus is calling an emergency board meeting. 3 o'clock. He wants to contest the claim. On what grounds? That's what I asked him. He started yelling about technicalities and loopholes. Thomas had to explain to him that the provision doesn't have any loopholes. That's rather the point. I could picture Marcus right now, probably screaming at his assistant while Googling how to fire someone retroactively. Sandra, can I ask you something off the record? Shoot. What's the board's take on Marcus's leadership? Another long pause. Let's just say, your timing is interesting. That told me everything I needed to know. The board had been watching Marcus drive the company toward a cliff, but they'd been stuck. He owned 51% of the shares, inherited from Daddy, which gave him absolute control. They couldn't remove him, couldn't override his decisions, couldn't do anything but watch him destroy everything his father had built. But if I suddenly owned 50%, the math changed. Marcus would still have 51%, but barely. And if even one board member supported me on any major decision, the meeting's at 3? I asked. Conference room Alpha. Chelsea, you should probably bring a lawyer. I'll be there. I hung up and immediately called David Chen, an attorney I'd worked with on several patent filings. David specialized in corporate law and had a reputation for being absolutely ruthless when necessary. Chelsea, how's the tech empire treating you? Funny you should ask. David, how quickly can you clear your afternoon? An hour later, I was sitting in David's BMW, reviewing strategy as we drove back toward Nexus. He'd read my documentation during lunch and was practically giddy with excitement. In 20 years of corporate law, I've never seen anything this clean, he said. Marcus doesn't have a legal leg to stand on. The only question is whether the board will try to delay while they look for procedural challenges. Can they do that? They can try. But here's the beautiful part, the provision includes specific language about timelines. They have to render a decision within 72 hours of receiving your claim, or the partnership automatically goes into effect. We pulled into the Nexus parking garage at 2:45. I could see several expensive cars in the executive spaces. The board members were already here. Ready? David asked. I looked up at the building where I'd spent 8 years of my life. Where I'd built something extraordinary. Where Marcus Reed had called me disposable. More than ready. Conference room Alpha was on the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. 12 board members sat around an oval table that probably cost more than most people's annual salary. Marcus was at the head of the table, looking like he'd aged 5 years in the last 3 hours. His usual smug confidence was gone, replaced by the wide-eyed panic of someone who'd just realized they'd made a catastrophic mistake. "Chelsea," he said as I walked in with David. "I'm glad you're here. We need to discuss this misunderstanding." I took a seat directly across from him. "There's no misunderstanding, Marcus. You eliminated my position without cause, triggering Section 47C of my employment contract. I'm here to formalize my partnership claim." Board member Patricia Walls, a sharp woman in her 60s who'd been skeptical of Marcus from day one, leaned forward. "Ms. Smith, we've reviewed your documentation. Your claim appears to be legally sound. However, Mr. Reed has raised some concerns about the scope of the provision." Marcus jumped in. "This is insane. My father never intended for some random employee to claim half the company." "Random employee?" I kept my voice calm, but inside I was burning. "Marcus, I built your entire digital infrastructure. Every system, every security protocol, every line of code that keeps this company running. Without me, your billion-dollar operation becomes a very expensive paperweight. We can hire other people. Can you?" David spoke for the first time, sliding a thick folder across the table. "That documentation includes every proprietary system Ms. Smith developed. The security protocols alone use encryption methods that would take a team of experts months to decode. The customer management platform integrates with 17 different third-party systems using custom APIs that exist nowhere else." Board member James Morrison, a man who actually understood technology, looked grim. "Marcus, what's Cloud Tech's timeline for taking over these systems?" They said 6 weeks for full implementation." "Based on what information?" Marcus fumbled with his tablet. "They reviewed our general system requirements." "Did you give them access to Chelsea's proprietary code?" "Well, no, but, so they gave you a timeline without seeing the actual systems they'd be replacing?" The silence was deafening. Patricia Walls looked directly at me. "Ms. Smith, if your claim is approved, what are your intentions regarding company operations?" This was the moment I'd been preparing for. The moment that would determine not just my future, but the future of everyone who worked at Nexus. First, I'd reverse the layoffs announced today. The technology team stays intact. Second, I'd implement a proper succession planning system to prevent this kind of chaos in the future. Third, I'd work with the board to establish clear accountability measures for executive decisions. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. "You can't just waltz in here and, actually, she can," interrupted board member Thomas Wright, the company's longest-serving director. "Marcus, your father specifically designed Section 47C to protect the company from exactly this scenario. He understood that key innovators are irreplaceable, not disposable." The word disposable hung in the air like smoke. Several board members glanced at Marcus with obvious disapproval. Patricia Walls consulted her notes. "The provision is clear. The documentation is complete. Unless there are any legal objections?" She looked at the company's general counsel, who shook his head slowly. "Then I move to approve Ms. Smith's partnership claim under Section 47C. "Seconded," said James Morrison. "All in favor?" 8 hands went up. Only Marcus and 2 of his old fraternity buddies abstained. Patricia Walls smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen in that room in years. Motion carried. "Ms. Smith, congratulations. You are now a 50% partner in Nexus Dynamics." Marcus stared at the table, his face pale. In the span of 4 hours, he'd gone from absolute monarch to, well, still technically in charge, but barely. But I wasn't done. Not yet. "There's one more thing," I said, standing up. "As a 50% partner, I'm invoking my right to call for a review of today's elimination decisions. I believe they constitute material operational risk." David handed me another folder. "Under the partnership agreement, any decision that threatens company stability can be reviewed by equal partners within 24 hours. Marcus looked up sharply. "You can't." "I can. And I am." I looked around the room at faces that were no longer hiding their relief. "I'm calling for a full reversal of today's layoffs and an operational review of all major decisions made in the last 6 months." Patricia Walls was trying not to smile. "Motion to review?" "Seconded." "All in favor of operational review?" This time, 10 hands went up. Marcus and his fraternity buddy sat in stunned silence. Motion carried. "Ms. Smith, as equal partner, you have the authority to reinstate the eliminated positions pending operational review." I pulled out my phone and started typing a company-wide email. Subject line, effective immediately, all layoffs. Reversed. Marcus watched me type, his face a mask of disbelief. "This isn't over," he said quietly. I looked up from my phone. "You're right. It's just beginning." The next morning, I walked into the Nexus building as an owner, not an employee. The security guard, Tony, did a double take when he saw me. "Ms. Smith? I heard you were." They said, "Change of plans, Tony." "I'm back." He grinned and handed me a new badge. Gold instead of silver, with "partner" printed below my name. "Congratulations, ma'am." About time, if you ask me. The elevator to the executive floor felt different now. Instead of going to my old office in the tech wing, I was heading to the top floor. To the partner's office that had been sitting empty. Since Mr. Reed's death, Marcus was already there, of course. He'd probably been up all night trying to figure out damage control. He stood in the hallway outside what had been his private domain, watching movers carry furniture into the adjacent office. "Good morning, Marcus," I said pleasantly. He looked like hell. Dark circles under his eyes, wrinkled shirt, the kind of exhaustion that comes from realizing your world has fundamentally shifted overnight. "The board approved your office setup," he said flatly. "You'll have equal access to all executive functions." "That's very considerate of them." I walked past him into my new space. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the entire city, and enough room for the kind of meeting table where real decisions got made. The movers were setting up my computer equipment, including 3 massive monitors and the custom server connection I'd requested. "Planning to run IT from up here?" Marcus asked from the doorway. "Among other things." I was reviewing the operational reports that had been delivered that morning. "Did you see the cloud tech proposal?" His jaw tightened. "What about it?" "They want $2.3 million upfront and $400,000 monthly to manage our systems. Plus a $50,000 fee for every custom integration." I set the proposal down. "Marcus, do you know what my department's annual budget was?" "I don't, around $800,000. $780,000. Including salaries for 12 people. Cloud Tech wants to charge us 3 times that amount to provide inferior service." I looked at him directly. "Did you actually review this proposal, or did you just see outsourcing and assume it was cheaper?" He didn't answer. "Here's what's going to happen. Cloud Tech is out. My team is back. And we're going to have a conversation about decision-making processes. You can't just, Marcus." I stood up, and something in my tone made him stop. "I'm not your employee anymore. I'm your partner. Which means when you make decisions that affect this company, you run them by me first. That's how partnerships work." The intercom on my desk buzzed. "Ms. Smith? Your 9 o'clock is here." My first meeting as a partner was with the entire technology team. They filed into the conference room looking confused, relieved, and cautiously optimistic. My lead developer, Sarah Kim, spoke for everyone. "Chelsea, what the hell happened? Yesterday we were packing our desks, and this morning we're back. With a 15% salary increase? Let's just say Marcus and I came to an understanding about the value of technology professionals." Over the next hour, I laid out the new structure. The tech team wasn't just restored, it was expanded. We were hiring 5 new developers, implementing a proper R&D budget, and establishing technology as a core business function, not a support service. "Questions?" I asked. Sarah raised her hand. "Are we sure this is permanent? Because yesterday really sucked." I smiled. "Sarah, unless Marcus wants to give up his other 1% and make me majority owner, the tech team is here to stay." The laughter that followed felt like the first genuine happiness the building had seen in months. My second meeting was more delicate. The board of directors had called a formal session to discuss transition protocols. Translation: they wanted to make sure I wasn't planning to burn the place down. Patricia Walls got straight to the point. "Chelsea, the partnership arrangement is unprecedented. The board wants to ensure smooth operations going forward. Of course, I've prepared a transition plan." I distributed the document I'd spent most of the previous evening writing. Detailed, professional, and carefully designed to address every concern they might have. First, all major operational decisions will be made jointly by both partners, with board oversight. Second, we'll establish clear departmental boundaries to avoid conflicts. Third, we'll implement quarterly reviews to ensure the partnership is functioning effectively. James Morrison looked impressed. "This is very thorough. What about day-to-day management?" "Marcus retains operational control of sales, marketing, and general administration. I'll handle technology, R&D, and strategic planning. Shared oversight of finance and HR." It was an elegant solution. Marcus kept the parts of the business he actually understood, while I took control of the areas where his incompetence could do real damage. What about disagreements? Asked Patricia. Board arbitration. As outlined in the partnership agreement. But I expect most decisions will be collaborative. Thomas Wright nodded approvingly. This seems reasonable. Marcus, do you have any concerns? Marcus had been silent throughout the meeting, staring at the table like it held the secrets of the universe. Finally, he looked up. How do I know you won't try to push me out entirely? The question hung in the air. Everyone knew it was the real issue. Marcus was terrified that I'd find a way to take complete control. Marcus, if I wanted you gone, there are easier ways to accomplish that than becoming your business partner. The company needs stability, not another power struggle. But you could. Legally, you could build a case for removing me. I leaned back in my chair. Yes, I could. Just like you had the legal right to fire me yesterday. The question is whether either of us is smart enough to learn from our mistakes. Patricia Walls looked between us like a referee watching two boxers touch gloves. Gentlemen, lady, I think we have a workable framework. Marcus, are you willing to accept these terms? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. Good. Then let's make this official. The next few weeks were a masterclass in corporate rehabilitation. With proper oversight in place, Marcus actually wasn't a terrible CEO. He had good instincts for sales and marketing, and once he stopped trying to micromanage everything, his decisions improved dramatically. The technology team flourished under the new structure. We launched 3 new client platforms, upgraded the security infrastructure, and started development on a revolutionary data analytics tool that would become our signature product. More importantly, the layoffs were permanently reversed, and we implemented a policy requiring board approval for any staff reductions above 5%. Never again would someone's career be decided by one person's whims. 3 months after my partnership claim, Nexus Dynamics reported its best quarterly results in company history. The technology innovations were generating new revenue streams, employee satisfaction was at an all-time high, and we'd landed 2 major contracts that Marcus's sales team had been chasing for years. Marcus and I weren't friends, we probably never would be. But we'd found a working relationship built on mutual respect and clearly defined boundaries. The real victory came 6 months later, during the annual company meeting. I was presenting the year-end technology report when a junior developer asked a question about career advancement. Is it true that you used to be an employee here, Ms. Smith? And now you're a partner? I smiled. That's right. How did that happen? Marcus was sitting in the front row, and for the first time since I'd known him, he looked genuinely amused. Well, I said, looking directly at him, someone once told me that technology people are disposable. I decided to prove them wrong. The applause that followed was spontaneous and sustained. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I could hear old Mr. Reed laughing. He designed Section 47C to protect his company from exactly what his son had tried to do. He'd built a safeguard against the kind of arrogance that values spreadsheets over people, profit margins over innovation, and ego over expertise. Marcus had called me disposable, but disposable people don't have the power to trigger hidden clauses, reverse executive decisions, and claim equal partnership in billion-dollar companies. The boy had learned an expensive lesson about the difference between being in charge and being in control, and I'd learned something too. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, sometimes it's getting equity. 6 months later, Nexus Dynamics was acquired by a Fortune 500 company for $2.8 billion. As equal partners, Marcus and I each walked away with $1.40 billion. Not bad for a disposable employee. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.